Will's brain returns. The theory goes that the Santi recover Will Downing's frozen brain, and the man humanity launched into the dark comes back as something that is no longer entirely human. Will, played by Alex Sharp, is the physics teacher diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in the first season of 3 Body Problem. He funds and volunteers for the Staircase Project, the plan Jin Chang devises to launch his cryogenically frozen brain on a radiation sail probe toward the approaching Santi fleet. On screen, the sail tears free of its rings, the capsule tumbles off course, and the mission appears to fail. But the theory argues the Santi, who are roughly 400 years from reaching Earth, intercept that drifting probe and reconstruct Will to study human psychology from the inside. This mirrors the source novels closely, where a recovered human consciousness becomes a tool the aliens use to understand the species they intend to conquer. Fans point out that the show spent an entire arc on Will's sacrifice, and a setup that heavy only pays off if he comes back. If the theory holds, his death wasn't a failure at all. It was the first successful contact, and the most human weapon humanity ever fired into the dark. The Sophons are awake. This theory asks a darker question than whether the Santi are watching. It asks whether their watchers still answer to them at all. Only 2 Sophons were ever deployed to Earth, and the Santi can clearly manufacture and send more, yet they conspicuously haven't, and the show never explains why. Several reviewers have flagged that the Sophons function as all-seeing nodes with effectively unlimited processing, a deliberate echo of a sentient artificial intelligence. The theory suggests those 2 Sophons have developed an independent priority structure the Santi never engineered. So they don't just surveil, they might evaluate, withhold, even selectively report. Remember, the show only confirms that Sophons can't broadcast our private thoughts. It never confirms they lack intent of their own. A bolder version holds that a second, undetected deployment is already running in a register our instruments can't see. If any of that is true, humanity's most dangerous enemy may have already fractured into a faction it can't even name, the Wallfacer Gambit. Because the Santi read every word and watch every screen, the theory says humanity's only counterplay is to hand a few people total power and forbid them from ever explaining why. Season 2 is confirmed to adapt the second novel and introduce the Wallfacer Project, with Saul Durand, played by Jovan Adepo, taking center stage. A Wallfacer is granted enormous resources to build a secret defense plan, with the real strategy hidden inside their own head, the one place the Sophons can't follow. In the novels, there are 4 Wallfacers, and the theory tracks how the show will compress and reassign their plans, since it already folded the first book's protagonist into the Oxford Five. The books counter the Wallfacers with Wallbreakers, agents tasked with deducing each secret plan, and the theory anticipates the show introducing that cat-and-mouse layer. Saul, like his novel counterpart Luo Ji, is set up as the reluctant choice who doesn't understand why he was picked. The Wallfacer concept is the franchise's signature idea, and how faithfully the show adapts it will decide whether Season 2 lands. Fans are already mapping book plans onto show characters, one slot at a time. Saul is the real Wallfacer. The theory argues the Santi already made their fatal mistake back in Season 1, by telling humanity exactly which person they were most afraid of. In the source novel, the aliens instruct their human collaborators to leave one Wallfacer completely alone, and that hands-off treatment inadvertently reveals he's the one they fear. The show planted Saul as seemingly minor, a friend hovering on the edge of the Oxford Five, easy to overlook. The theory holds that his apparent unimportance is the exact same misdirection, and the moment the Santi pointedly ignore him, they mark him as the genuine threat. It quietly reframes a background character into the eventual key to the entire war, the man the enemy would rather pretend isn't there. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I make videos like this all the time, and a subscribe would genuinely help the channel out. Thanks.
The hunters are hunted. Everyone watching assumes the Santi are the apex predator of this story, but the theory says they're the ones running for their lives. The Dark Forest premise establishes a cosmos where every civilization is at once hunter and prey, with no species sitting at the top, because the hierarchy has no top. The Santi are abandoning a triple-star system that will eventually destroy Trisolaris no matter what they do, and that much is confirmed. What isn't confirmed is whether those unstable suns are the only reason they flee. The theory suggests the Santi are themselves being hunted by a higher civilization that has already noticed them, which makes their 400-year voyage a refugee flight, and Earth a target partly because it sits far from whatever is chasing them. This tracks the way the show frames them, acting out of fear rather than confidence, smothering human science because an advanced humanity could lead a predator straight to their door. There's also the Singer, the alien exterminator who, in the later books, flattens both Earth and Trisolaris. The Singer operates on timescales that suggest it was watching this region long before humanity ever made a sound. So the theory casts the Singer, or something like it, as the original threat behind the Santi exodus. And the Dark Forest broadcast that finally ends the war dooms both worlds at once, which underlines the point. Trisolaris was never safe either. This is the show's most consequential reframe, turning the conflict from humanity against invaders into two prey species trapped in a cosmos built to destroy them both. The Netflix version has already humanized the Santi more than the novels did, which makes this reading a real creative possibility rather than a stretch. The Hidden Wallbreaker. The Wallfacers have their secret plans, but the theory says the Santi have always had someone on the inside, and it may be a face the audience already trusts. A Wallbreaker, in the novels, is the direct counter to a Wallfacer, an agent of the Earth Trisolaris organization tasked with profiling and publicly exposing a Wallfacer's true plan, neutralizing it without the Santi ever needing to understand it themselves. The show has already established an active Earth Trisolaris organization with human collaborators embedded close to the main characters. The theory holds that one of the Season 1 Oxford 5, or a recurring supporting character, will be revealed in Season 2 as exactly that, a Wallbreaker assigned to crack the Wallfacer's plans. The most debated candidates are Augie, whose early crisis of conscience marks her as someone the organization would love to cultivate, and Jin, whose intellect and closeness to Saul make her a structural match for a Saul-specific Wallbreaker. The tension is that a Wallbreaker doesn't have to be a traditional villain. One might genuinely believe that exposing false hope is the kindest thing they could do. It's a real plot mystery with stakes, and exactly the kind of dramatic irony this show's writers love. Reveal a trusted character as an inside agent, and every Season 1 scene of trust reads differently overnight. The Droplet annihilates the fleet. This theory promises the single most devastating scene the show hasn't filmed yet, a teardrop of metal that erases humanity's entire space navy in under an hour. In the second novel, the Santi send a probe humanity nicknames the Droplet, a flawlessly smooth, mirror-surfaced object built from strong interaction material. Humanity, grown overconfident after assembling a fleet of 2,000 warships, sends ships out to greet the probe, fully expecting a peaceful first contact. The Droplet answers by accelerating and punching through ship after ship, ramming each vessel's fuel core and destroying all but a couple of those 2,000 ships in less than an hour. It's one of the most famous sequences in modern science fiction, a brutal, almost contemptuous demonstration of the gap between the two species. The theory holds the show is saving this for a Season 2 or Season 3 set piece, because it's the moment that shatters humanity's hope and forces the desperate turn toward deterrence. Fans note the production clearly has both the budget and the confirmed multi-season runway to attempt it, with filming on future seasons already scheduled through 2027. And here's the cruel detail. The Droplet's surface is so perfectly smooth, it looks almost beautiful, which is precisely why the human fleet fatally misreads it as something that came in peace. It's the scene book readers are most desperate to see adapted, and whether the show commits to it is a litmus test for how brave it's willing to be. Shi Survives Everything. Of every character staring down a 400-year war, the theory bets on the one cop who refuses to take any of it seriously. Shi, played by Benedict Wong, is the gruff detective who anchors the human side of Season 1 with blunt, unbothered practicality. In the source novels, his counterpart, Shi Chang, survives all the way into the deterrence era through hibernation, and remains a stabilizing presence across centuries of upheaval. The theory predicts the show will keep Shi alive across its time jumps using the exact same cryogenic hibernation the story has already established. Fans see him as the audience surrogate the show simply can't afford to lose as the timeline starts leaping forward by decades and then centuries. He's the one steady voice in a story about the end of everything, and that's worth preserving. Wenjie Planned It All. The theory argues the woman who invited the aliens wasn't naive at all, but the most far-sighted strategist in the entire story. Wenjie, played by Rosalind Chow in the present timeline, and Zine Tseng in the flashbacks, is the astrophysicist who answers the Santi and welcomes them to Earth. Having witnessed the worst of humanity during the Cultural Revolution, she concludes the species can't save itself and needs an outside force to set things right. In the novels, Her late-life conversations plant the very seed of the Dark Forest theory in Luo Ji, the man who'll become humanity's decisive Wallfacer. The theory holds that this final guidance isn't idle reflection, it's a deliberate handoff, seeding the one idea that could let humanity survive the invasion she herself set in motion. It recasts her from a guilt-ridden betrayer into something stranger and more compelling, the person who started the war and quietly armed humanity to fight it. If that's true, the show's central tragic figure is also its hidden architect, and her arc carries a redemptive twist hiding in plain sight. The San-Ti lie about lying. The San-Ti claim they physically cannot deceive, but the theory says that very confession is the deception that dooms humanity. The aliens communicate by displaying their thoughts directly, so in their culture, a statement and the truth are the same thing, and at first they can't even grasp the concept of a lie. In Season 1, they recoil in genuine horror upon realizing that humans deceive each other routinely, and they cut off contact, branding the whole species untrustworthy. The theory suggests that by the events of the later books, the San-Ti have learned to lie precisely by studying us, and then turn that brand new skill back against humanity. Fans argue the show is setting up a clean reversal, where the species that couldn't deceive becomes the better deceiver, quietly stripping away the one cultural advantage humanity thought it held. It connects directly to how the deterrent standoff is eventually broken in the novels, through a single calculated alien deception. The weakness becomes the weapon, and the groundwork is already sitting there in Season 1. Sophons built a human avatar. The theory claims the most powerful thing aimed at Earth isn't a fleet, but a single woman in a kimono who doesn't actually exist. In the later novels, the San-Ti manifest a Sophon as a humanoid avatar, frequently depicted as a woman, which finally lets them hold a direct conversation with humanity. That avatar becomes the alien voice in negotiations, and she delivers some of the franchise's most chilling lines. The theory predicts the show will introduce this embodied Sophon as its direct San-Ti presence, because the aliens otherwise have no face for human-scale drama. It solves a very real adaptation problem, giving an enemy you can't see a single physical character that actors can finally play against. It's the most likely way the show hands its alien antagonist a face, and fans are already casting it in their heads.
The Staircase probe changes history. Everyone calls the Staircase project a failure, but the theory argues that broken off-course probe is the single most important object humanity ever launched. The sail tore loose during acceleration, sending Will's brain capsule tumbling away from its intended path toward the San-Ti fleet, and on screen, the mission gets written off, the probe presumed lost in the dark. The theory holds that it isn't lost, only drifting, and that its eventual recovery, whether by the San-Ti or by a future human fleet, becomes a turning point in the larger war. In the novels, the recovered consciousness and the technology bundled around it ripple forward for centuries, shaping the endgame in ways no one expects. Fans argue the show would never have devoted so much of Season 1 to the project if it were a true dead end, which points to a long-delayed payoff. It turns the show's saddest apparent failure into a planted seed, the kind of patient, decades-long setup this franchise has built its reputation on. The solar system goes two-dimensional. This theory promises the most terrifying ending in science fiction, the day a passing stranger flattens the entire solar system into a painting, and no one ever sees it coming. In the third novel, the franchise's ultimate weapon is the dual vector foil, a small object that collapses three-dimensional space down into two dimensions. Anything the expanding two-dimensional zone touches is instantly and permanently flattened, planets, ships, and people alike. And the weapon isn't even deployed by the San-Ti. It's used by a far more advanced civilization, whose member, a low-ranking cleaner the books call the Singer, casually flattens the solar system after its location is exposed. This is the Dark Forest rule taken to its absolute conclusion, a near effortless act of cosmic housekeeping that ends Earth's entire neighborhood. The theory holds the show is structurally walking toward this as its series finale, because it's where the source material ends, and it's the only ending that truly pays off the Dark Forest premise. Fans point out the franchise has a confirmed endgame and a multi-season plan, which makes the two-dimensional collapse the destination the whole series has been quietly aiming at. And the real horror isn't malice, it's indifference. The Singer doesn't hate humanity, it doesn't even notice humanity. It treats the annihilation of our entire world as routine maintenance, a smudge wiped off a counter. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.